employees from all wards in the city. So, and it's...
Does the bridge get turned over to the city? Or just, so then you take care of the maintenance and stuff like that?
Yes.
Plowing and cleaning and stuff?
Plowing, cleaning. DDOT does that very well. How are we doing with our bridges? I think we're doing pretty well with...
Good. We had two that we're still working. TR Bridge.
Yep.
We got to do some work there, and also H Street.
Okay. Oh, H Street. That's a big one. We need a lot of help with that. But it's going to open up our ability.
Douglas and the history of the area. So we've got one of these at north, south of each pier, both pier locations. So you can come, walk, take a moment to take in the scenery, enjoy, the vistas that we have here in this area. So,
You can see our beautiful Bahama DC United.
I know. We don't have a home. We play at Foxborough.
Okay, so this is your home away from home.
It's my home now.
And they're fired up and ready to go. They're doing pretty well. Now I can't see my baseball stadium here. Yes, this is Cresting. Okay. Yes. A drop right in front of it. Yep.
Take down the existing bridge.
And does that come down next year too?
Comes down into this year, right? When we open up this bridge, the next old one will start coming down.
Okay.
So
That's right, there's a small matter of getting rid of the old one.
small matter.
Is that considered part of the same project? Okay.
So we'll get that done in the fall before we have a fish window in February where spawning happens in the river and we're only allowed to do work for a certain time of year. So we've got a small window that will open up both sides. Bridge.
It's such an asset. We've also worked very hard to make sure that all of the new investment doesn't push people out, and that is that we've been intentional about all those things.
What are the strategies for that?
There's a number of things to kind of focus on Anacostia and Ward 8 and investments there, job training in Anacostia and housing. So not just in the historic Anacostia is the neighborhood right on the other side of this bridge, but all of Ward 8.
Coffee over there. And I went to a women-owned business, health food. Yeah, I was in there, bought some stuff just now, and it's told us in there. And he said, his typical request, but it was good. It was nice. We said coffee. It was great. Coffee shop, restaurant.
Labor.
Good guys.
Go ahead. Hello and good morning.
So with that, I have the opportunity now to introduce two friends. We're going to start with Secretary Buttigieg, who is the Secretary for Transportation, and then Secretary Walsh will speak to us and we'll be able to take a few questions. Secretary Buttigieg.
Well, thank you, Mayor, my mayor, now that I am a resident and proud to be of the district, someday to be state that we are calling home. Thank you, Majority Leader Hoyer, for your leadership. Feels good. I know it's not new anymore, but it feels good saying Majority Leader. And Representative Norton, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your visionary words. I'm not just saying that because of your leadership on the committee that oversees my work, but it can't hurt. And thank you, General President O'Sullivan, Sean Gilchrist, and all of the workers that you represent, and all of organized labor for making this such a great example of things that we are talking about that can make such a positive difference around the country. And I want to thank Secretary Walsh, but we'll come to him in a moment. So many things to love about what we see here, and I am thrilled to be able to point in a very literal way to the job creation that is possible when America decides to make good and needed investments in infrastructure. I'm excited to take a closer look, as we have at this bridge. I say a closer look because I take a look at the progress of this bridge every single day, looking out the window of my office at the Department of Transportation. And of course, the second most exciting thing to see is these beautiful arches rising, and that will eventually be painted by the color of lights on that bridge. But the most exciting thing to see is the people who are working on this site and the livelihoods that come with this critically important work. I also want to applaud the decision to make sure that there is excellent bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Again, not just from a selfish perspective as somebody who intends to use it, but as somebody who is encouraging leaders across the country to look at the importance of active transportation. And I want to applaud the considerations of equity that have driven this work, something I'll return to in a minute. But as was mentioned earlier, we are also taking this opportunity to highlight the importance of the American Jobs Plan. An opportunity, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make the investments that are needed for the next generations to thrive. And yes, that includes a lot about bridges. We got 45,000 bridges in the United States that are in poor condition. Many of you have followed the news of the fractured bridge in Memphis, which is causing such economic disruption in that area. Americans cross those bridges 178 million times every single day. That's why we need to put together the funding to repair our roads and bridges. And yes, our roads and not only our roads, but our ports and our airports. And yes, broadband internet is infrastructure. And yes, getting lead pipes out of the position to endanger our future is an infrastructure investment. All of these things fit together. And if we pass the American Jobs Plan, we will be making the biggest investment in American jobs since World War II. We're also setting out to do it equitably. which was what I want to feature here. There's two sides to what we've got to do in transportation equity. One of it is equity in who is served by the transportation asset, and the linking of the 6th and 8th Ward, the connection of Prince George's County to D.C., all of the benefit that will come to those who have lived in this area is one of the reasons we're very proud of the Frederick Douglass Bridge. But there's also equity in terms of who gets the actual literal work opportunities that come directly with the investment. And that's why this project labor agreement is so important. That's why the local hiring that has gone on here is so important. And that's why I'm going to look at my notes here, because we are making a little bit of news. I want to share that we are thrilled to announce that today the U.S. Department of Transportation is restarting and expanding our local hiring initiative with an additional focus on workforce development. We know this can work because it worked right here. In 2015, the U.S. Department of Transportation approved the use of local hiring provisions for the Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge, and hundreds of people from this immediate area have been hired. Now, the unfortunate part is that the federal pilot program that enabled this kind of local hiring was discontinued under the previous administration. But that is why I am so pleased to announce that we are taking this new course. We are going to help people across the country get good jobs in construction and turn those jobs into great careers in the building trades. And yes, we're talking about good paying union jobs for the American people. So under this 4-year pilot, the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration will enable recipients of federal dollars for construction projects to include local labor hiring preferences, including for low-income workers or underinvested, underserved, and overburdened communities. And we're doing that in the context of a larger moment, where our country is coming to terms with labor and equity and climate and so many other imperatives that are at stake in every single infrastructure decision we make. And we know that there is a challenge and even a struggle in getting the kind of investments that we really need to make done. But we're also in the symbolic shadow of Frederick Douglass, who said, without struggle, there is no progress. So I know we're all prepared to get that job done. And with that, I have the honor of turning it over to a fellow secretary, a fellow mayor, someone we all looked up to in the community of U.S. mayors. It can be a little distracting when you hear his Midwestern accent, but if you can get past that, you will hear the wisdom of his words and you will admire his leadership as I do. Please welcome Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh.
Hi, Secretary Buttigieg. My name's Julie Zosmer. I'm a Washington Post reporter. I was hoping you could update us on your conversations with Republicans in Congress about this bill that you're talking about today, and how you'd respond to the Republican proposal today to spend some of these investments on roads, but not necessarily on other forms of transportation.
So I'd say we had a productive conversation, and the purpose of our conversation was really to see where there are areas of overlap and to understand the perspective that they're bringing. We obviously start in very different places, but that's how negotiation works. And I want to mention that there's a lot of negotiation going on. After all, House and Senate members are also negotiating with each other as the committees take up things like the surface transportation bill that needs to pass this year. So we're going to continue working in the context of that dialogue, make sure that we understand one another's positions and of course, presenting the President's views going forward. Didn't hear a lot of red lines, as you've heard from our side. The main red lines that the President has expressed are, one, we're not going to raise taxes on anybody making less than $400,000 a year. Number two, that doing nothing is simply not an option for all of the reasons we just discussed. We have to get something done.
Secretary Buttigieg, Dave Shepardson from Reuters. As you know, the President was in Michigan driving an electric truck yesterday. Are you concerned that the Republicans have expressed opposition to boosting EVs and other aspects of the infrastructure bill, that there is not going to be enough common ground? It's not just about getting to the right number. Can you find common ground on the policies to advance EVs and other green efforts? and yet also address Republicans' priorities?
Well, I agree. It's a great point that this isn't just about numbers. This is about policies, and the president has made it very clear that climate is a priority for this administration. It's a priority for this country. And at the climate summit, the president stated very ambitious goals on behalf of the U.S. to the community of nations participating. So we're very serious about pursuing those goals. Now, a lot of our transportation decisions, they're climate decisions whether we say so or not. But I also think there is scope for common ground here, too, around things like the job creation potential of electric vehicles. And I think seeing what was going on at the F-150 plant was a good example. I think it's also helpful because I know that there's still a persistent image, maybe in some folks' minds, of the little car that's good for getting around a city. People are still thinking of a Prius, which, from hybrid vehicles. And those are great, but understanding that it may well be on work sites and in rural areas that people have the most to gain by going electric, because that's where you're driving the most, you got the most fuel savings, is a really important point for us to make. So we're going to continue, I think, advancing what we believe is important, not so much to make sure electric vehicles happen, they're happening with or without us, but to make sure they're made in America by American companies and American workers, and we want them to be union workers.
Hi, Ashraf Khalil with the Associated Press. I just wanted to clarify. So this bridge, this particular project, was launched using the local hiring practices that the exact same set of standards that you are bringing back. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I'll just add that the pilot we're announcing today obviously is within the authorities that we have, and those authorities have a lot of constraints. If there were fewer constraints, we could do more in this direction, and I'm sure that'll continue to be a discussion as we're working on things like the legislative text on the jobs plan.
Hey, Secretary Pete, can I slip one more in? A big topic today, the EU is going to lift the restrictions and let Americans who've been vaccinated to come back into the country, or come to the EU. When do you think the U.S. might lift its 212F restrictions, and do you think the U.S. would require people to get vaccinated before they come to the U.S.?
Well, ultimately, this is a public health decision, and so there's an interagency process, and obviously the CDC is driving a lot of that. There are two ways of looking at this, right? One is to look at countries, the other is to look at travelers, and the important thing in striking that balance is to make sure that we hit the appropriate balance that maximizes safety, but also maximizes something I think we all want to see, which is a return to more travel. As the Secretary of Transportation, I'm the first who is eager to see these things get up and running, provided it can be safe.